Question 1. Governance review demonstrates that CarMax is seeking to enhance its hiring assessment process for entry-level sales consultants. Which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. federal employment law and ethical hiring practices for CarMax? Option A. Develop a multi-stage assessment that includes behavioral interviews, situational judgment tests, and a role-play simulation, all designed to measure skills directly related to the essential functions of a sales consultant, ensuring consistent administration and objective scoring. Option B. Prioritize candidates who have prior experience in the automotive industry, even if their skills are not directly transferable to the specific sales consultant role, to reduce initial training time. Option C. Implement a personality questionnaire that asks about candidates' hobbies and social media activity to gauge their cultural fit with the CarMax brand, regardless of its direct relation to job performance. Option D. Utilize a broad cognitive ability test that has not been validated for the specific sales consultant role, assuming it will identify generally intelligent and capable individuals. Correct answer is A. Develop a multi-stage assessment that includes behavioral interviews, situational judgment tests, and a role-play simulation, all designed to measure skills directly related to the essential functions of a sales consultant, ensuring consistent administration and objective scoring. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's operational needs with the ethical and regulatory obligations to its stakeholders, particularly in the context of a hiring assessment. CarMax, as a publicly traded company, operates under various U.S. federal and state laws and regulations governing employment practices, including those related to fair hiring and data privacy. The challenge lies in designing an assessment that is both effective in identifying suitable candidates and compliant with these legal and ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment process is not discriminatory, does not violate privacy rights, and accurately reflects the skills needed for the role without introducing bias. The correct approach involves designing an assessment that is job-related, validated, and administered in a non-discriminatory manner, adhering to principles of fairness and equal opportunity. This aligns with regulations such as the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission (EOC) guidelines, which emphasize that selection procedures must be job-related and consistent with business necessity. Ethically, this approach respects the dignity and rights of all applicants by providing a fair chance based on merit and qualifications. An incorrect approach that relies on subjective criteria or personal biases would fail to meet regulatory standards. For example, using criteria not directly related to the job's essential functions could lead to disparate impact on protected groups, violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Another incorrect approach might involve collecting excessive personal information that is not relevant to the job, potentially violating privacy laws or creating an uncomfortable and unfair experience for candidates. Furthermore, failing to ensure the assessment is accessible to individuals with disabilities, as required by the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA), would also be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance, ethical considerations, and business objectives. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the role, researching relevant U.S. employment laws and best practices, and designing assessment tools that are objective, validated, and administered fairly. Seeking legal counsel or HR expertise can help ensure compliance and mitigate risks. The process should be iterative, with regular reviews and updates to assessment methods to maintain fairness and effectiveness. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates that CarMax's quarterly financial reporting process is facing time constraints due to an accelerated reporting deadline. A junior analyst has flagged a potential discrepancy in inventory valuation that, if corrected, could slightly impact the reported profit margin. The team lead is considering whether to proceed with the current figures to meet the deadline or to delay the report to investigate the discrepancy thoroughly. Option A. Immediately halt the reporting process. Initiate a full investigation into the inventory valuation discrepancy with relevant stakeholders, and only proceed once the accuracy is confirmed and any necessary adjustments are made, regardless of the deadline. Option B. Ask the junior analyst to reevaluate the discrepancy independently and make a decision based solely on their revised assessment without further team consultation. Option C. Proceed with the current figures to meet the accelerated deadline, assuming the discrepancy is immaterial and will be addressed in the next reporting cycle. Option D. Submit the report with the current figures and include a footnote acknowledging the potential discrepancy and the ongoing investigation. Correct answer is C. Proceed with the current figures to meet the accelerated deadline, assuming the discrepancy is immaterial and will be addressed in the next reporting cycle. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because CarMax, as a publicly traded company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight, particularly concerning financial reporting and disclosure. Ensuring the accuracy and integrity of financial statements is paramount to maintaining investor confidence and complying with securities laws. The challenge lies in balancing the need for timely information with the absolute requirement for accuracy and adherence to accounting principles. Misrepresenting financial data, even unintentionally, can lead to significant legal and reputational damage. The correct approach involves a thorough and systematic review of all relevant financial data, cross-referencing with supporting documentation, and ensuring compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, and any specific CarMax internal policies. This meticulous verification process is essential for producing reliable financial statements that accurately reflect the company's performance and position. Regulatory frameworks, such as those enforced by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in the U.S., mandate that financial reports be free from material misstatement. Ethical considerations also demand transparency and honesty in financial reporting. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy would fail to identify potential errors or misrepresentations, thereby violating regulatory requirements for accurate financial disclosure. This could lead to misleading investors and potentially result in SEC enforcement actions, fines, and shareholder lawsuits. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on unaudited internal reports without independent verification risks overlooking critical discrepancies or fraudulent activities. This undermines the integrity of the financial reporting process and exposes CarMax to significant compliance risks. A third incorrect approach that selectively presents data to create a more favorable impression, even if technically true in isolation, constitutes a form of misrepresentation. This violates the principle of fair presentation required by accounting standards and regulatory bodies. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy, compliance, and ethical conduct. This involves establishing clear internal controls, conducting rigorous due diligence, seeking expert advice when necessary, and fostering a culture of accountability. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as deadlines versus accuracy, the professional's duty is to uphold regulatory and ethical standards, even if it means delaying a report or raising concerns about data integrity. Question 3. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a recent customer expressed dissatisfaction with a vehicle purchased from CarMax, claiming a mechanical issue that was not apparent during their initial inspection and was not covered by the limited warranty. The customer is requesting a significant repair cost reimbursement. What is the most appropriate initial step for the CarMax service manager to take? Option A. Initiate a thorough review of the vehicle's inspection report, repair history and warranty terms, and gather any additional relevant information before making a decision. Option B. Politely inform the customer that all sales are final and that the limited warranty does not cover the described issue, closing the case. Option C. Immediately authorize the requested reimbursement to ensure customer satisfaction and avoid negative reviews. Option D. Offer a partial reimbursement as a gesture of goodwill, without conducting a full investigation, to expedite the resolution. The correct answer is C. Immediately authorize the requested reimbursement to ensure customer satisfaction and avoid negative reviews. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing customer satisfaction with adherence to CarMax's internal policies and potentially relevant consumer protection regulations. The pressure to resolve a customer complaint quickly can sometimes lead to overlooking established procedures or making exceptions that could have broader implications. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any resolution is fair, consistent, and compliant. The correct approach involves thoroughly investigating the customer's claim by reviewing all available documentation, including the vehicle's inspection report, repair history, and any warranty information. This approach is right because it ensures that decisions are based on objective evidence and CarMax's established operational standards. It aligns with ethical business practices by demonstrating a commitment to transparency and fairness in resolving disputes. Furthermore, it implicitly adheres to consumer protection principles by ensuring that customers are treated equitably and that CarMax fulfills its obligations as a seller of used vehicles. An incorrect approach that involves immediately offering a significant discount or a full refund without proper investigation is professionally unacceptable. This fails to uphold CarMax's policies and could set a precedent for future customers to exploit similar situations, leading to financial losses and undermining the integrity of the company's pricing and sales processes. It also risks violating principles of fairness by potentially offering concessions not warranted by the facts. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the customer's concerns outright without a thorough review, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of customer service and could lead to negative publicity and damage to CarMax's reputation. Ethically, it fails to address potential issues that might indicate a systemic problem with vehicle inspections or quality control, which could have broader implications for customer safety and satisfaction. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, actively listen to and acknowledge the customer's concern. Second, gather all relevant information and documentation. Third, objectively assess the situation against company policies and any applicable regulations. Fourth, determine a fair and consistent resolution. Finally, communicate the decision clearly and professionally to the customer, explaining the rationale behind it. Question 4. Upon reviewing a customer's interest in a pre-owned vehicle at CarMax and noticing a minor, undisclosed cosmetic imperfection that could potentially affect its resale value, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure both customer satisfaction and adherence to CarMax's ethical sales practices? Option A. Proactively disclose the cosmetic imperfection to the customer, explaining its minor nature and how it might impact future resale value, while also highlighting the vehicle's overall quality and value. Option B. Downplay the significance of the imperfection, suggesting it is a common occurrence for vehicles of this age and not worth significant concern. Option C. Focus on the vehicle's positive attributes and the current attractive pricing, hoping the customer does not notice the imperfection or is willing to overlook it. Option D. Proceed with the sale without mentioning the imperfection, assuming the customer will discover it later and that it is not a material defect. The correct answer is A. Proactively disclose the cosmetic imperfection to the customer, explaining its minor nature and how it might impact future resale value, while also highlighting the vehicle's overall quality and value. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax employee because it involves balancing the company's operational needs with the ethical and legal obligations to customers. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that all customer interactions and transactions are conducted with integrity and transparency, adhering strictly to CarMax's internal policies and relevant consumer protection laws. Misrepresenting information or failing to disclose material facts can lead to significant legal repercussions, damage to CarMax's reputation, and erosion of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to navigate situations where a customer's understanding might be incomplete or where there's a temptation to expedite a process at the expense of full disclosure. The correct approach involves proactively and clearly communicating all relevant terms and conditions of a vehicle purchase or sale to the customer, ensuring they understand the implications of their decisions. This includes providing accurate information about vehicle history, financing options, and any associated fees or warranties. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it upholds the principle of informed consent, a cornerstone of consumer protection law. By prioritizing transparency and customer understanding, the employee acts in accordance with CarMax's commitment to customer satisfaction and avoids potential violations of Deceptive Trade Practices Acts. An incorrect approach that involves withholding or downplaying negative information about a vehicle's condition or history is ethically unacceptable and legally risky. This constitutes a failure to disclose material facts, which can be considered deceptive or fraudulent. Such an action violates the trust placed in CarMax by its customers and could lead to legal action for misrepresentation or breach of contract. Another incorrect approach, such as pressuring a customer into a decision without allowing them adequate time to review information or ask questions is also problematic. This can be seen as coercive and undermines the customer's ability to make a truly informed choice. Ethically, it disregards the customer's autonomy, and legally, it could be construed as an unfair or deceptive sales practice. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on closing the sale without ensuring the customer fully comprehends the terms of the agreement, particularly regarding financing or extended service plans, is also flawed. While efficiency is important, it should not come at the cost of customer understanding and protection. This can lead to future disputes and dissatisfaction, damaging the customer relationship and CarMax's brand. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to honesty, transparency, and customer education. Employees should always prioritize providing complete and accurate information, allowing customers ample opportunity to ask questions and make informed decisions. When in doubt, seeking guidance from a supervisor or referring to CarMax's established policies and procedures is crucial to ensure compliance and ethical conduct. Question 5. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, less rigorous vehicle inspection protocol could significantly reduce operational expenses for CarMax. Which of the following approaches best balances potential cost savings with the company's obligations to its customers and regulatory bodies? Option A. Focus solely on the projected financial savings from the new inspection protocol, as maximizing shareholder value is the primary objective. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the proposed inspection protocol, assessing its impact on vehicle safety, compliance with all relevant consumer protection laws, e.g., FTC regulations regarding vehicle condition disclosures, and potential effects on customer trust and long-term brand reputation before any decision is made. Option C. Implement the new inspection protocol immediately to realize cost savings, assuming current customer satisfaction levels will remain stable. Option D. Reduce the number of vehicles inspected under the new protocol to achieve cost savings, believing that a sample inspection is sufficient. The correct answer is C. Implement the new inspection protocol immediately to realize cost savings, assuming current customer satisfaction levels will remain stable. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because CarMax, as a publicly traded company, has a fiduciary duty to its shareholders, which includes maximizing profitability. However, this duty is balanced by the need to comply with various consumer protection laws and ethical business practices. The challenge lies in identifying initiatives that offer a clear return on investment while also upholding regulatory standards and maintaining customer trust. A decision that prioritizes short-term cost savings at the expense of regulatory compliance or customer satisfaction could lead to significant long-term financial and reputational damage, including fines, lawsuits, and loss of market share. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation that considers not only the direct financial benefits, but also the potential risks and long-term implications of any proposed change. This includes assessing the impact on customer experience, brand reputation, and adherence to all applicable consumer protection regulations. Specifically, CarMax must ensure that any cost-saving measures do not result in misleading advertising, unfair sales practices, or a reduction in the quality or transparency of their services, which are all areas governed by consumer protection laws. A thorough risk assessment, including legal and compliance review, is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to implement cost-saving measures without adequately assessing their impact on regulatory compliance. For instance, reducing the scope of vehicle inspections to save on labor costs could violate implied warranties or lead to the sale of vehicles with undisclosed defects, thereby contravening consumer protection laws. Similarly, streamlining the financing process in a way that obscures important terms or fees would be a violation of fair lending practices and disclosure requirements. Another failure would be to prioritize cost reduction over customer service feedback, potentially leading to practices that, while cheaper, alienate customers and damage CarMax's reputation, indirectly impacting profitability and potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny if customer complaints escalate. Professionals at CarMax should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the business objective, e.g., cost reduction. This should be followed by brainstorming potential solutions. Each solution must then undergo a rigorous assessment of its potential benefits, financial, operational, and risks, regulatory, reputational, customer impact. This assessment should involve cross-functional teams, including legal, compliance, operations, and marketing. The final decision should be based on a holistic view, favoring solutions that offer a sustainable balance between profitability, regulatory adherence, and customer satisfaction. A proactive approach to identifying and mitigating risks before implementation is key to sound professional judgment. Question 6. The control framework reveals a potential vulnerability in how CarMax handles customer financing application data, specifically regarding the secure transmission and storage of sensitive financial information. Which of the following actions best addresses this control weakness from a stakeholder perspective, considering regulatory compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Share the identified vulnerability with a third-party vendor for them to assess and propose solutions, without actively participating in the remediation process internally. Option B. Conduct a superficial review of the current data transmission methods and update the employee handbook with a general statement on data privacy without significant changes to existing systems. Option C. Immediately implement enhanced encryption protocols for all data transmissions and establish stricter access controls for stored financial data, coupled with mandatory employee training on secure data handling procedures. Option D. Prioritize the speed of processing customer financing applications by temporarily bypassing some security checks until a later, less busy period for system upgrades. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement enhanced encryption protocols for all data transmissions and establish stricter access controls for stored financial data, coupled with mandatory employee training on secure data handling procedures. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's operational needs with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning customer data privacy. CarMax, as a used car retailer, handles a significant amount of sensitive customer information, including financial details, personal identification, and vehicle ownership records. Ensuring the integrity and security of this data is paramount, not only to maintain customer trust, but also to comply with relevant consumer protection laws. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential risks within the control framework that could lead to data breaches or misuse, while also ensuring that business processes can function efficiently. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive review of CarMax's data handling policies and procedures, specifically focusing on the lifecycle of customer information from acquisition to disposal. This includes assessing the adequacy of existing security measures, employee training on data privacy, and the mechanisms for reporting and responding to potential breaches. Regulatory compliance, such as adherence to the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, in the United States, which governs the privacy and security of financial information held by financial institutions, including auto dealerships that offer financing, is a key justification. Ethical considerations also demand that CarMax act in the best interest of its customers by safeguarding their personal data. Robust control frameworks should embed these principles into daily operations. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the identified control weakness as a minor inconvenience or to implement superficial changes that do not address the root cause of the vulnerability. For instance, simply updating a password policy without reinforcing its enforcement or providing adequate training on secure password practices would be an ethical and regulatory failure. This approach neglects the responsibility to protect customer data, potentially leading to violations of privacy laws and a significant loss of customer confidence. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of business operations over data security, perhaps by expediting data sharing without proper anonymization or consent, which would directly contravene data protection principles and legal requirements. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making process. This involves first identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities within the control framework, assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks, and then prioritizing mitigation strategies based on their effectiveness and alignment with regulatory requirements and ethical standards. Regular audits, continuous monitoring, and a commitment to ongoing employee education are crucial components of maintaining a strong control framework and ensuring responsible data stewardship at CarMax. Question 7. Examination of the data shows that CarMax is considering a new initiative to share aggregated, anonymized customer vehicle purchase and sale data with third-party market research firms to gain insights into market trends. While the data is intended to be anonymized, the process of aggregation and the potential for future re-identification are points of discussion. CarMax's legal and compliance team needs to determine the most appropriate course of action to ensure adherence to U.S. federal and state data privacy laws and ethical business practices. Option A. Focus solely on the potential revenue generated by sharing this data, as market research insights are crucial for business growth and competitive advantage, and address any potential privacy concerns only if a formal complaint is filed. Option B. Share the data immediately, assuming that the general terms of service already agreed to by customers cover such data utilization for market research purposes. Option C. Implement a robust consent mechanism where customers are clearly informed about the proposed data sharing and have the explicit option to opt in or opt out before any data is shared, even if aggregated and anonymized. Option D. Proceed with sharing the aggregated, anonymized data, as anonymization inherently removes personal identifying information and thus bypasses most privacy regulations. The correct answer is D. Proceed with sharing the aggregated, anonymized data, as anonymization inherently removes personal identifying information and thus bypasses most privacy regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because CarMax, as a publicly traded company, has a responsibility to its diverse stakeholders, including shareholders, customers, employees, and the broader community. Balancing the financial interests of shareholders with the ethical considerations of customer data privacy and regulatory compliance requires careful judgment. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulations to a specific business practice, ensuring that CarMax operates both profitably and ethically. The correct approach involves prioritizing compliance with the specific data privacy regulations applicable to CarMax's operations in the United States, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or similar state-level laws, and adhering to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, guidelines regarding data security and consumer protection. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal and ethical obligations CarMax has concerning customer data. By focusing on obtaining explicit consent and providing clear opt-out mechanisms, CarMax demonstrates a commitment to consumer privacy rights, which is a fundamental ethical principle and a legal requirement. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with sharing customer data without explicit consent, relying solely on a general privacy policy that customers may not have fully read or understood. This fails to meet the affirmative consent requirements often mandated by data privacy laws and violates the ethical principle of respecting individual autonomy over personal information. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize potential revenue generation from data sharing above all else, disregarding the potential for privacy violations and the associated legal ramifications. This demonstrates a disregard for regulatory frameworks and ethical responsibilities, potentially leading to significant fines, lawsuits, and severe damage to CarMax's brand reputation. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that because data is anonymized, it is exempt from all privacy considerations. While anonymization can reduce risk, many regulations still impose obligations regarding the handling of data that could potentially be re-identified, and ethical considerations around data usage persist. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of all applicable regulations, a clear assessment of the potential risks and benefits of any proposed action, and a commitment to ethical conduct. This includes consulting with legal counsel to ensure compliance, engaging in robust internal risk assessments, and prioritizing transparency and consumer rights in all data handling practices. Question 8. Assessment of how a CarMax associate should handle a situation where a close family member brings in a vehicle for appraisal and potential sale to CarMax, and the associate has direct knowledge of the vehicle's condition and potential market value beyond what is typically available during a standard appraisal. Option A. Proceed with the appraisal and sale as usual, using their knowledge to ensure their family member receives a fair offer, as this benefits both the family member and CarMax. Option B. Discreetly offer a slightly higher appraisal value than standard procedure to ensure their family member feels well treated, without explicitly stating the personal connection. Option C. Disclose the personal relationship to a manager and recuse oneself from any involvement in the appraisal and sales process for that vehicle. Option D. Inform their family member of the appraisal process and potential offer range beforehand, so the family member can negotiate more effectively with another associate. The correct answer is C. Disclose the personal relationship to a manager and recuse oneself from any involvement in the appraisal and sales process for that vehicle. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax employee because it requires them to navigate potential conflicts of interest and uphold the company's commitment to fair and transparent dealings with customers. The core of the challenge lies in balancing personal gain with professional integrity and adhering to CarMax's internal policies and relevant consumer protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any customer interaction, especially one involving a potential personal benefit, is conducted ethically and in compliance with established guidelines. The correct approach involves prioritizing the customer's best interest in CarMax's reputation by disclosing the personal relationship and recusing oneself from the transaction. This upholds professional integrity by avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. Ethically, it aligns with principles of fairness and transparency, ensuring the customer receives an unbiased assessment and offer. From a regulatory perspective, while specific regulations for this exact scenario might not be explicitly detailed in a general hiring assessment, the underlying principles of consumer protection and fair dealing are universally recognized. CarMax's internal policies would likely mandate such disclosure and recusal to prevent conflicts of interest and maintain customer trust, which is paramount in the automotive retail industry. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the transaction without disclosure creates a significant conflict of interest. This failure is ethically problematic as it exploits the customer's trust and potentially leads to an unfair transaction, whether the employee consciously or unconsciously favors their relative. It also violates professional standards of impartiality. Another incorrect approach, which is to offer a slightly lower price to make it seem fair, is also professionally unacceptable. This is a form of deception, as it implies a genuine offer while secretly manipulating the price. It undermines transparency and erodes customer trust, which is a cornerstone of CarMax's business model. Furthermore, such actions could expose CarMax to reputational damage and potential legal challenges if discovered. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of company policies regarding conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When faced with a situation where a personal relationship might influence professional judgment or create the appearance of impropriety, the first step is to identify the potential conflict. The next step is to consult company policy, and if necessary, seek guidance from a supervisor or the ethics department. The guiding principle should always be to act in a manner that is transparent, fair, and in the best interest of both the customer and the company. Prioritizing ethical conduct and adherence to policy over personal convenience or potential gain is crucial for maintaining professional credibility and safeguarding the company's reputation. Question 9. Which approach would be most appropriate for a CarMax associate to take when a customer expresses dissatisfaction with a vehicle's condition discovered shortly after purchase, which was not immediately apparent during the initial inspection? Option A. Promise the customer that CarMax will cover all repair costs for the discovered issue, regardless of policy limitations. Option B. Advise the customer that all sales are final and that any issues discovered after purchase are the customer's responsibility. Option C. Immediately offer a full refund to the customer to ensure satisfaction and avoid further complications. Option D. Politely listen to the customer's concerns, review CarMax's return and inspection policies, and consult with a sales manager to assess the situation and determine the best course of action. The correct answer is C. Immediately offer a full refund to the customer to ensure satisfaction and avoid further complications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax associate because it requires balancing customer satisfaction with adherence to company policy and potentially regulatory guidelines regarding vehicle condition and disclosure. The associate must exercise sound judgment to determine the appropriate course of action when a customer expresses dissatisfaction with a vehicle's condition post-purchase, especially if the issue was not immediately apparent or was not fully disclosed. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting the scope of CarMax's return policy and any implied warranties or consumer protection laws that might apply, without overstepping their authority or making promises that cannot be kept. The correct approach involves a thorough, policy-driven, and customer-centric investigation. This approach is right because it prioritizes understanding the customer's specific concern, referencing the established CarMax return and inspection policies, and engaging with the appropriate internal resources, e.g., sales manager, service department, to assess the vehicle's condition and the validity of the complaint. This aligns with principles of fair dealing and customer service, ensuring that CarMax acts responsibly and transparently. It also respects the contractual agreements and policies in place, providing a structured and justifiable resolution. An incorrect approach that involves immediately offering a full refund without proper investigation fails to uphold company policy and could set a precedent for unwarranted returns. It bypasses the established procedures for assessing vehicle condition and potential defects, potentially leading to financial losses for CarMax and undermining the integrity of their sales process. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the customer's concerns outright without a proper review, demonstrates a lack of customer service and could violate ethical standards of fair business practice. It fails to acknowledge the customer's legitimate dissatisfaction and could lead to reputational damage for CarMax. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves making promises about repairs or compensation beyond the scope of company policy or the associate's authority is also problematic. This can lead to unmet expectations, further customer dissatisfaction, and potential breaches of contractual obligations. Professionals should approach such situations by first actively listening to the customer's concerns, then consulting relevant company policies and procedures, and finally escalating the issue to the appropriate management or department for a fair and informed resolution. This systematic process ensures that decisions are grounded in policy, fairness, and a commitment to resolving issues effectively. Question 10. Implementation of a data security protocol at CarMax is being reviewed following a report of a potential unauthorized access to customer vehicle purchase history data. Which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for handling such a situation? Option A. Immediately notify all affected customers and relevant state attorneys general, while simultaneously launching a thorough internal investigation to determine the scope and nature of the breach. Option B. Inform only senior management and legal counsel, and instruct all other employees to deny any knowledge of the incident until a definitive internal conclusion is reached. Option C. Publicly disclose the potential breach on CarMax's website and social media channels to ensure maximum transparency, even before a full investigation is complete. Option D. Wait for definitive proof of a breach and the full extent of compromised data before initiating any external communication or internal investigation to avoid unnecessary alarm. Correct answer is A. Immediately notify all affected customers and relevant state attorneys general, while simultaneously launching a thorough internal investigation to determine the scope and nature of the breach. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax associate regarding the ethical and regulatory handling of customer information, specifically in the context of a potential data breach. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's obligation to protect customer privacy with the need for transparency and timely communication in the event of a security incident. CarMax, as a consumer-facing business, is subject to various data privacy regulations that mandate specific actions when sensitive customer data is compromised. A hasty or incomplete response can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of customer trust. The correct approach involves a structured, compliant, and transparent response to a suspected data breach. This includes immediate internal investigation, assessment of the scope and nature of the breach, notification to affected individuals and relevant authorities as required by law, and implementation of remedial measures. This approach is justified by regulations such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or similar state-level data breach notification laws, which typically require prompt notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies. Ethically, this demonstrates a commitment to customer welfare and responsible data stewardship. An incorrect approach of downplaying the incident and delaying notification fails to meet regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. This could violate specific data breach notification statutes, leading to fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach of oversharing unverified information prematurely could cause undue panic among customers and potentially compromise the ongoing investigation, also leading to regulatory scrutiny and reputational harm. Finally, an approach that prioritizes avoiding negative publicity over customer protection is fundamentally unethical and likely to be in violation of privacy laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance with applicable data privacy laws and ethical principles. This involves establishing clear protocols for incident response, including immediate reporting, thorough investigation, legal counsel consultation, and adherence to notification timelines and content requirements. The focus should always be on protecting customer data and maintaining trust through transparent and responsible communication. Question 11. Compliance review shows that a customer at CarMax is requesting detailed information about another customer's vehicle purchase history, citing a vague concern about a potential past issue. The associate is unsure if this request can be fulfilled due to privacy concerns. Option A. Directly provide the requested vehicle purchase history to the inquiring customer to ensure customer satisfaction and avoid potential complaints. Option B. Politely inform the inquiring customer that CarMax cannot share any information about other customers' transactions due to privacy policies, without further explanation or offering alternatives. Option C. Rely on personal judgment and understanding of general privacy principles to determine what information can be shared, assuming the inquiring customer's concern is legitimate. Option D. Consult CarMax's internal data privacy policy and relevant U.S. federal and state privacy laws, and if necessary, escalate the request to the legal or compliance department for guidance before responding to the customer. Correct answer is D. Consult CarMax's internal data privacy policy and relevant U.S. federal and state privacy laws, and if necessary, escalate the request to the legal or compliance department for guidance before responding to the customer. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts between company policy and regulatory requirements, specifically concerning customer data privacy and disclosure. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to provide accurate information to a customer with the legal obligations to protect sensitive personal data. A hasty or uninformed response could lead to regulatory violations, reputational damage for CarMax, and potential legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with both internal procedures and external legal mandates. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of CarMax's internal data privacy policies and relevant U.S. federal and state regulations governing customer information. This approach prioritizes adherence to legal frameworks, such as the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, if applicable to the specific transaction, and state-specific privacy laws. It recognizes that while customer satisfaction is important, it cannot come at the expense of violating privacy laws. By consulting with the appropriate internal department, e.g., legal or compliance, and ensuring any disclosure is authorized and compliant, the individual upholds both ethical standards and legal obligations. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling, a critical aspect of operating within the automotive retail sector. An incorrect approach that involves directly providing the requested information without verification or authorization fails to acknowledge the stringent privacy regulations in place. This could lead to a breach of customer data, violating laws like GLBA or state-specific privacy statutes, and exposing CarMax to significant fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach, which is to simply refuse to provide any information without explanation, while avoiding a privacy breach, can lead to customer dissatisfaction and potentially damage CarMax's reputation for customer service. It misses an opportunity to educate the customer on privacy limitations and explore compliant alternatives. Finally, an approach that relies solely on personal interpretation of privacy rules without consulting official company policy or legal counsel is highly risky, as individual understanding may be incomplete or inaccurate, leading to unintentional violations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core issue and the relevant stakeholders. Next, they must consult all applicable internal policies and external regulations. If there is any ambiguity or potential conflict, seeking guidance from designated internal experts, legal, compliance, is paramount. The decision should always prioritize legal and ethical compliance, followed by customer service considerations within those boundaries. This systematic approach ensures that actions are defensible, compliant, and aligned with the company's values and legal responsibilities. Question 12. During the evaluation of a candidate for an open position at CarMax, an employee discovers that the candidate is a close personal friend. The employee is not directly involved in the hiring decision for this role, but has some informal influence within their department. What is the most professionally responsible course of action for the employee to take regarding their friend's application? Option A. Advise their friend on how to best play the game during the interview process, sharing insights into CarMax's internal culture and potential interview questions based on their personal knowledge. Option B. Discreetly mention to the hiring manager that their friend is a strong candidate, highlighting their positive personal qualities to subtly encourage a favorable review. Option C. Remain silent about the personal relationship and allow the hiring process to unfold naturally, assuming their friend's qualifications will speak for themselves. Option D. Inform the hiring manager and relevant HR personnel about the personal relationship and recuse themselves from any informal discussions or influence related to the candidate's application, allowing the standard hiring process to proceed objectively. The correct answer is D. Inform the hiring manager and relevant HR personnel about the personal relationship and recuse themselves from any informal discussions or influence related to the candidate's application, allowing the standard hiring process to proceed objectively. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and maintain the integrity of CarMax's hiring process. The core challenge lies in balancing the desire to assist a personal acquaintance with the paramount duty to uphold fair and objective hiring standards, as mandated by general employment law and CarMax's internal policies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any recommendation or action taken is free from bias and does not compromise the company's commitment to equal opportunity. The correct approach involves a commitment to the established hiring protocols and a transparent disclosure of the personal relationship. This upholds professional integrity by ensuring that the candidate is evaluated solely on their merits and qualifications, as per CarMax's standard procedures. This aligns with ethical principles of fairness and impartiality in employment, and implicitly with regulatory expectations that hiring decisions be non-discriminatory and based on job-related criteria. By adhering to the standard interview process and avoiding any undue influence, the individual demonstrates a commitment to CarMax's values and legal obligations. An incorrect approach that involves advocating for the candidate outside of the formal process, such as making direct recommendations to the hiring manager or sharing internal assessment details, represents a significant ethical and potentially legal failure. This action breaches confidentiality, introduces bias into the hiring decision, and undermines the fairness of the process. It could lead to accusations of favoritism, discrimination against other candidates, and a violation of CarMax's internal policies designed to ensure a merit-based selection. Furthermore, such actions could expose CarMax to legal challenges if the unqualified candidate is hired over more suitable applicants due to undue influence. Another incorrect approach, such as withholding information about the personal relationship from CarMax management or the hiring team, is also professionally unacceptable. This omission creates a hidden conflict of interest and prevents CarMax from making an informed decision about the objectivity of the hiring process. It erodes trust and can lead to serious repercussions if the relationship is discovered later, potentially impacting the validity of the hiring decision and CarMax's reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of CarMax's hiring policies and ethical guidelines. When a personal relationship exists with a candidate, the first step is to assess if it creates a conflict of interest. If it does, the individual must proactively disclose the relationship to their supervisor or the appropriate HR representative. They should then recuse themselves from any part of the hiring process that could be influenced by the personal connection ensuring that the candidate is evaluated through the standard, objective channels. This commitment to transparency and adherence to established procedures is crucial for maintaining professional integrity and upholding the principles of fair employment. Question 13. Compliance review shows that a CarMax regional manager has identified a significant positive trend in vehicle sales for the upcoming quarter based on preliminary data. The manager is eager to share this promising outlook with the sales team and potentially with local media to boost morale and generate excitement. What is the most appropriate course of action for the regional manager to ensure compliance with CarMax's disclosure obligations and relevant securities regulations? Option A. Inform the sales team verbally about the positive trend to motivate them, but instruct them not to share this information externally until official quarterly results are released. Option B. Compile a detailed report of the preliminary sales trend, including the data sources and any assumptions made, and submit it to CarMax's legal and finance departments for review and approval before any external communication. Option C. Immediately share the preliminary sales trend with the sales team and suggest they communicate it to their networks, while also preparing a press release for local media. Option D. Forward the preliminary sales data directly to the Investor Relations Department with a request for them to issue a public statement immediately, without further internal review. The correct answer is C. Immediately share the preliminary sales trend with the sales team and suggest they communicate it to their networks, while also preparing a press release for local media. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because CarMax, as a publicly traded company, operates under strict regulatory oversight regarding its financial reporting and disclosures. The challenge lies in balancing the need for timely and accurate information with the potential for misinterpretation or premature release of sensitive data. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with securities laws and internal policies while maintaining market confidence. The correct approach involves a structured and documented process for reviewing and approving any public statements or disclosures. This ensures that all information released by CarMax is accurate, complete, and compliant with relevant regulations, such as those enforced by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in the United States. Specifically, this approach prioritizes internal review by legal and finance departments, adherence to established disclosure policies, and timely filing of required reports. This aligns with the ethical obligation to provide truthful and transparent information to investors and the public, thereby preventing insider trading concerns and maintaining the integrity of the capital markets. An incorrect approach that involves immediately releasing preliminary sales figures without proper verification and approval would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the regulatory requirement for accurate and audited financial information. Such an action could lead to misleading the market, potentially violating SEC rules on fair disclosure, and could expose CarMax to significant legal and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which is to withhold all information until the final quarter results are compiled, even if significant positive developments have occurred that are not yet finalized, is also professionally unsound. A caution is necessary. Completely suppressing material information that could be relevant to investors, even if not yet fully auditable, could be seen as a failure to provide timely updates and could lead to accusations of market manipulation or a lack of transparency. This approach fails to strike a balance between accuracy and the need for appropriate disclosure of material events as they develop, within the bounds of regulatory guidance. A third incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on informal verbal confirmations from department heads for public statements, bypasses essential internal controls and regulatory compliance checks. This method lacks the necessary documentation and formal review processes required for public disclosures. It significantly increases the risk of disseminating inaccurate or incomplete information, which can have severe legal and financial repercussions for CarMax and its stakeholders, and directly contravenes the principles of robust corporate governance and regulatory adherence. Professionals at CarMax should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes a thorough understanding of applicable securities laws and internal disclosure policies. This framework should include a mandatory multi-stage review process for all external communications, particularly those related to financial performance. When in doubt about the materiality or timing of a disclosure, consulting with the legal and investor relations departments is paramount. The guiding principle should always be to prioritize accuracy, completeness, and compliance, ensuring that all information released to the public is both truthful and timely, as mandated by regulatory bodies. Question 14. Performance analysis shows that a customer at CarMax is expressing dissatisfaction with the initial appraisal offer for their vehicle, believing it to be significantly lower than expected. The associate has reviewed the appraisal report, which details the vehicle's condition, mileage, and market comparables used. The customer is insistent that the offer is unfair and is considering leaving. What is the most appropriate course of action for the CarMax associate? Option A. Reiterate the appraisal findings clearly and explain the factors that influence the valuation, offering to have a supervisor review the appraisal if the customer remains unconvinced. Option B. Politely inform the customer that the appraisal is final and there is no room for negotiation without further explanation. Option C. Agree with the customer's assessment that the offer is unfair and suggest they try selling their car elsewhere. Option D. Immediately offer a higher price than initially appraised to satisfy the customer and prevent them from leaving. The correct answer is A. Reiterate the appraisal findings clearly and explain the factors that influence the valuation, offering to have a supervisor review the appraisal if the customer remains unconvinced. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax associate by requiring them to navigate potential conflicts between customer expectations and company policy, particularly concerning the valuation of a vehicle. The associate must exercise sound judgment to uphold CarMax's commitment to fair and transparent practices while managing customer satisfaction. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need to adhere to established appraisal guidelines with the desire to retain a customer's business. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective appraisal process, adhering strictly to CarMax's established valuation methodology. This methodology is designed to ensure fairness and consistency across all transactions. By explaining the appraisal process and the factors influencing the valuation, the associate demonstrates transparency and professionalism. This aligns with ethical business practices and regulatory expectations that emphasize fair dealing and accurate representation of a vehicle's value. CarMax's internal policies and any relevant consumer protection regulations would support this approach by mandating honest and consistent valuation practices. An incorrect approach of immediately offering a higher price to appease the customer without a proper reappraisal fails to uphold the integrity of the valuation process. This could lead to financial discrepancies for CarMax and set a precedent for inconsistent pricing, potentially violating internal policies and creating an unfair market perception. Another incorrect approach of dismissing the customer's concerns without a clear explanation of the appraisal results is unprofessional and erodes trust. This could lead to customer dissatisfaction and potential complaints, which might trigger regulatory scrutiny if perceived as deceptive or unfair business conduct. Finally, an approach that involves exaggerating the vehicle's condition to justify a higher price would be a direct violation of ethical standards and potentially misrepresent the vehicle's true value, leading to future issues for both the customer and CarMax. Professionals should approach such situations by first actively listening to the customer's concerns, and then clearly and calmly explaining the established appraisal process and the objective factors that contributed to the valuation. If the customer remains dissatisfied, the next step should be to review the appraisal with them, highlighting specific findings and reiterating that the offer is based on CarMax's consistent methodology. If there are genuine discrepancies, or if the associate believes an error may have occurred, escalating the situation to a supervisor for a second opinion or review within the established policy framework is the appropriate professional decision-making step. Question 15. Compliance review shows that a regulatory body has requested specific, detailed information regarding CarMax's inventory valuation methods and recent sales trends. The request is time-sensitive, with a deadline of 48 hours. Which of the following approaches best ensures CarMax's adherence to U.S. securities laws and ethical disclosure practices? Option A. Acknowledge the request. Inform the regulatory body that a comprehensive review involving legal, finance, and operations is underway, and provide an estimated timeframe for a complete and verified response, aiming to meet the deadline if possible but prioritizing accuracy. Option B. Delegate the task to a single junior analyst to compile the data with minimal oversight to ensure a quick turnaround. Option C. Immediately provide the requested information based on the most readily available internal data, assuming it is sufficiently accurate for the deadline. Option D. Inform the regulatory body that the request is overly burdensome and cannot be fulfilled within the given time frame, and offer to provide a high-level summary at a later date. The correct answer is C. Immediately provide the requested information based on the most readily available internal data, assuming it is sufficiently accurate for the deadline. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because CarMax, as a publicly traded company, operates under strict regulatory oversight regarding its financial reporting and disclosures, ensuring the accuracy and completeness of information provided to investors, and the public is paramount to maintaining market integrity and avoiding legal repercussions. The challenge lies in balancing the need for timely information with the absolute requirement for accuracy and adherence to regulatory standards. A hasty or incomplete response, even with good intentions, can lead to significant compliance issues. The correct approach involves a thorough, multi-departmental review process that prioritizes accuracy and regulatory compliance. This approach is professionally sound because it acknowledges the complexity of the information requested and the potential impact of any inaccuracies. By involving legal, finance, and relevant operational teams, CarMax ensures that the response is not only factually correct, but also aligns with all applicable securities laws and disclosure requirements. This systematic verification process mitigates the risk of misstatements, omissions, or misleading information, thereby protecting the company and its stakeholders. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible corporate governance expected under U.S. securities regulations. An incorrect approach that involves providing an immediate, unverified response is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the rigorous standards of accuracy and completeness mandated by regulatory bodies like the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Such an approach risks disseminating inaccurate or incomplete information, which can be construed as a violation of disclosure rules, potentially leading to investigations, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which is to defer the request indefinitely without a clear timeline or process for response, is also professionally deficient. While caution is necessary, an indefinite delay can be interpreted as an attempt to avoid disclosure or as a sign of internal disarray, which can negatively impact investor confidence and potentially violate regulations, requiring timely responses to legitimate inquiries from regulatory bodies or significant stakeholders. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledge receipt of the request and communicate an estimated timeframe for a comprehensive response. Second, immediately initiate an internal review involving all relevant departments to gather and verify information. Third, consult with legal counsel to ensure the response adheres to all regulatory requirements and disclosure obligations. Finally, provide a complete, accurate, and timely response that has been thoroughly vetted. This methodical process ensures that CarMax upholds its compliance obligations and maintains its reputation for integrity. Question 16. The performance metrics show a significant increase in customer complaints regarding the accuracy of vehicle valuations at CarMax. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of the vehicle valuation process, including appraisal training, data sources, and comparison with industry benchmarks, to identify root causes and develop targeted solutions. Option B. Immediately offer a company-wide discount on all vehicle purchases to mitigate customer dissatisfaction and prevent further complaints. Option C. Publicly state that customer complaints regarding valuations are subjective and not indicative of systemic issues. Option D. Advise appraisal staff that the increase in complaints is due to individual errors and instruct them to be more careful in the future. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of the vehicle valuation process, including appraisal training, data sources, and comparison with industry benchmarks, to identify root causes and develop targeted solutions. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in customer complaints regarding the accuracy of vehicle valuations at CarMax. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts customer trust, CarMax's reputation, and potentially its financial performance. A hasty or misinformed response could exacerbate the problem, leading to further customer dissatisfaction and regulatory scrutiny. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause and implement effective solutions that align with industry best practices and consumer protection regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough, data-driven investigation into the specific reasons behind the increased complaints. This includes analyzing the valuation process, reviewing training materials for appraisal staff, and comparing CarMax's valuation methodology against industry standards and competitor practices. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes understanding the problem before implementing solutions, thereby ensuring that any corrective actions are targeted and effective. It aligns with ethical obligations to provide fair and accurate services to consumers and adheres to general principles of good business practice, which implicitly require transparency and accuracy in dealings with customers. While specific CarMax internal policies would guide the exact steps, the overarching principle is one of diligent inquiry and responsible problem-solving. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a blanket discount on all vehicle purchases to appease customers. This is professionally unacceptable because it fails to address the underlying issue of valuation accuracy. It is a reactive measure that does not solve the problem and could lead to financial losses for CarMax without improving customer satisfaction in the long term. It also suggests a lack of confidence in the company's own valuation process. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the complaints as isolated incidents without further investigation. This is professionally unsound, as it ignores potential systemic issues that could be damaging CarMax's reputation and customer relationships. It demonstrates a lack of accountability and a failure to uphold the duty of care owed to customers. A third incorrect approach would be to blame individual appraisal staff without a comprehensive review of the valuation system and training. This is ethically problematic, as it unfairly targets employees without due process and fails to identify potential flaws in the company's processes or tools. It can create a negative work environment and does not guarantee a resolution to the valuation accuracy problem. Professionals should approach such situations by first acknowledging the reported issue and initiating a structured investigation. This involves gathering all relevant data, identifying potential causes, and evaluating various solutions based on their likely effectiveness and adherence to ethical and business principles. The decision-making process should prioritize customer well-being, operational integrity, and long-term business sustainability. Question 17. System analysis indicates that a CarMax associate has discovered unusual activity on a customer's account that may suggest unauthorized access. The associate is concerned about the potential for a data breach and its implications for customer privacy. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the associate to take? Option A. Directly contact the affected customer to inform them of the potential security issue and gather more information. Option B. Immediately attempt to investigate and resolve the suspicious activity independently to prevent any potential data compromise. Option C. Report the suspicious activity to their direct supervisor and the designated CarMax security or compliance department for further investigation and action. Option D. Wait to see if the suspicious activity escalates or resolves itself before taking any action to avoid unnecessary alarm. The correct answer is B. Immediately attempt to investigate and resolve the suspicious activity independently to prevent any potential data compromise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax employee regarding the handling of customer information, specifically in the context of a potential data breach. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's obligation to protect customer privacy with the need for transparency and timely communication in the event of a security incident. Careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate course of action that minimizes harm to customers and adheres to legal and ethical standards. The correct approach involves immediate internal reporting and escalation to the designated security or compliance team. This aligns with CarMax's responsibility to act diligently and proactively when a potential data breach is identified. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data privacy and consumer protection in the United States, e.g., state-specific data breach notification laws, FTC guidelines, mandate prompt investigation and notification to affected individuals and relevant authorities. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to customer trust and minimizes potential financial and reputational damage by addressing the issue swiftly and according to established protocols. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspicious activity or to attempt to resolve it independently without involving the appropriate internal channels. Ignoring the activity is a direct violation of data protection obligations and could lead to significant legal penalties and loss of customer confidence. Attempting to resolve it independently without proper expertise or adherence to established procedures risks exacerbating the breach, failing to contain it effectively, and potentially destroying evidence crucial for investigation. This also bypasses the company's established incident response plan, which is designed to ensure compliance with all applicable regulations and to protect customer data. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately notify customers without a thorough internal investigation and assessment of the breach's scope and impact. This premature notification could cause unnecessary panic, spread misinformation, and potentially alert malicious actors that their activities have been detected before the company has a clear understanding of the situation or a plan to mitigate it. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to company policy and regulatory requirements. This involves recognizing potential security incidents, understanding the severity and scope, and following established incident response protocols. Key steps include immediate internal reporting, collaborating with legal and compliance teams, conducting a thorough investigation, and implementing a timely and compliant notification strategy if a breach is confirmed. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that customers often rely on initial online estimates when considering selling their vehicle to CarMax. If a customer arrives for an appraisal and their expectations are significantly higher than the in-person offer due to the online estimate, what is the most appropriate course of action for a CarMax associate to take, ensuring compliance with U.S. consumer protection regulations and ethical business practices? Option A. Lightly explain that the online estimate is a preliminary figure and the in-person appraisal is the definitive offer, detailing the factors that influence the final appraisal value and offering to answer any questions the customer may have about the process. Option B. Emphasize the initial online estimate as a strong indicator of value and attempt to negotiate a price closer to it, even if it means stretching the boundaries of the company's appraisal guidelines. Option C. Inform the customer that the online estimate is merely a marketing tool with no real bearing on the actual offer and that they should have known this. Option D. Proceed with the appraisal without addressing the discrepancy, assuming the customer will understand the final offer is what it is. The correct answer is A. Politely explain that the online estimate is a preliminary figure and the in-person appraisal is the definitive offer, detailing the factors that influence the final appraisal value and offering to answer any questions the customer may have about the process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax employee because it requires navigating potential conflicts between customer expectations and company policy, while also adhering to specific regulatory guidelines related to consumer protection and fair business practices within the United States. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire to secure a sale with the obligation to provide accurate and non-misleading information, especially when dealing with a customer's perception of value. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any communication aligns with CarMax's ethical standards and relevant U.S. consumer protection laws. The correct approach involves transparently communicating the CarMax appraisal process and its limitations, emphasizing that the initial online estimate is not a guaranteed offer. This aligns with professional best practices by prioritizing honesty and managing customer expectations proactively. From a regulatory standpoint, this approach adheres to principles of fair dealing and avoids deceptive practices, which are central to consumer protection laws like the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) Act. By clearly stating that the in-person appraisal is the definitive offer, the employee acts ethically and legally, preventing potential disputes and upholding CarMax's reputation. An incorrect approach that involves downplaying the difference between the online estimate and the in-person appraisal, or implying that the online figure is a firm offer, would constitute a regulatory and ethical failure. This could be construed as a deceptive trade practice under FTC guidelines, as it misrepresents the nature of the service offered and could lead a customer to believe they are receiving a higher offer than is actually possible. Another incorrect approach, such as pressuring the customer to accept a lower offer without a clear explanation of the appraisal factors, could also be problematic. While not explicitly illegal in all contexts, it erodes trust and can be seen as an unfair business practice, potentially violating state-level consumer protection statutes that prohibit unfair or deceptive acts or practices. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the customer's underlying need or expectation. Next, they must identify the relevant company policies and applicable regulations. The core of the decision then involves communicating information truthfully and transparently, managing expectations realistically, and ensuring that all actions are consistent with ethical conduct and legal requirements. If there is any ambiguity, seeking guidance from a supervisor or legal department is a crucial step in professional decision-making. Question 19. Compliance review shows that CarMax's internal policy for handling customer vehicle history reports allows for broader internal sharing of this sensitive data than permitted under current U.S. federal regulations governing consumer information. An employee is tasked with accessing and reviewing these reports for a new internal project. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to the regulatory framework? Option A. Access the customer vehicle history reports and request explicit written consent from each customer before sharing any information internally, even if it delays the project. Option B. Access and share the customer vehicle history reports internally according to CarMax's established policy, assuming the policy has been vetted by the legal department. Option C. Access and share the customer vehicle history reports internally only with those individuals directly involved in the new project, strictly adhering to the limitations imposed by U.S. federal regulations. Option D. Access the customer vehicle history reports and share them broadly within CarMax to ensure all relevant departments are aware of potential insights, as this aligns with CarMax's internal policy for maximizing data utilization. The correct answer is B. Access and share the customer vehicle history reports internally according to CarMax's established policy, assuming the policy has been vetted by the legal department. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts between company policy and regulatory requirements, specifically concerning data privacy and customer information handling. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficient internal operations with the absolute imperative to comply with the law, ensuring customer trust and avoiding legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to identify and implement the legally compliant solution, even if it appears less convenient or immediately beneficial from a purely operational standpoint. The correct approach involves prioritizing the regulatory framework over internal company policy when a conflict arises. This is because regulatory requirements, such as those governing data privacy, are legally binding and carry significant penalties for non-compliance. Adhering to the law is paramount to protecting the company from fines, lawsuits, and reputational damage. This approach demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and responsible business practices, which are fundamental to maintaining customer trust and long-term business sustainability. An incorrect approach that relies solely on CarMax's internal policy without considering the regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a misunderstanding or disregard for the supremacy of legal mandates over internal guidelines. Such an approach risks violating data privacy laws, leading to severe legal consequences for CarMax and potential disciplinary action for the employee. Another incorrect approach that attempts to find a workaround that skirts the spirit of the regulation, even if technically adhering to the letter, is also problematic. This demonstrates a lack of integrity and a failure to uphold the ethical principles of data protection, potentially exposing CarMax to future regulatory scrutiny and reputational harm. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the relevant regulatory requirements. This should be followed by a thorough review of internal company policies to determine if they align with or conflict with these regulations. In cases of conflict, the regulatory requirement must always take precedence. If internal policies are found to be non-compliant, the professional's responsibility is to escalate the issue and advocate for policy changes that bring the company into full compliance. This proactive and legally informed approach ensures both operational efficiency and adherence to the law. Question 20. Investigation of a suspected unauthorized access to a CarMax customer database reveals that personally identifiable information, PI, may have been exposed. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for a CarMax employee who discovers this potential breach, considering the need for prompt and compliant response? Option A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive internal forensic investigation to determine the full extent of the breach before notifying any customers or authorities. Option B. Delay any action until a definitive confirmation of a breach is obtained to avoid unnecessary alarm among customers and potential internal disruption. Option C. Report the suspected breach to the designated internal security and legal teams for immediate assessment and to trigger the company's incident response protocol, which includes evaluating notification requirements. Option D. Inform affected customers directly via email about the potential exposure of their PII, providing details about the suspected breach and steps they should take. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive internal forensic investigation to determine the full extent of the breach before notifying any customers or authorities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a CarMax employee regarding the ethical and regulatory handling of customer information, specifically in the context of a potential data breach. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's obligation to protect customer privacy with the need for transparency and timely notification in the event of a security incident. CarMax, as a consumer-facing business, operates under various data privacy regulations that mandate specific actions when sensitive customer data is compromised. A hasty or incomplete response can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of customer trust. Conversely, an overly cautious approach that delays necessary actions can also have severe consequences. Therefore, careful judgment, adherence to established protocols, and a thorough understanding of regulatory requirements are paramount. The correct approach involves a systematic and compliant response that prioritizes customer notification and mitigation efforts in accordance with applicable laws. This typically includes immediate internal investigation to confirm the breach, assessment of the scope and nature of the compromised data, and prompt notification to affected individuals and relevant authorities. This aligns with regulatory frameworks such as the various state data breach notification laws in the United States, which generally require notification without unreasonable delay. The ethical imperative is to treat customers with respect and provide them with the information they need to protect themselves from potential harm. An incorrect approach that involves delaying notification to conduct a full internal investigation before informing customers is professionally unacceptable. While internal investigation is crucial, regulatory frameworks often set strict timelines for notification that cannot be entirely superseded by internal processes. This failure to notify promptly can violate legal requirements, leading to fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach, such as only notifying customers if the breach is confirmed to be severe, is also problematic. Many regulations require notification even if the severity is still being assessed, as the potential for harm exists. This approach risks underreporting incidents and failing to provide customers with timely warnings. Finally, an approach that involves downplaying the incident to customers or providing vague information is ethically unsound and can be legally problematic. Transparency and clarity are essential in data breach communications to enable customers to take appropriate protective measures. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with immediate escalation of the suspected incident to the appropriate internal security and legal teams. This team should then initiate a rapid assessment of the situation, guided by the company's incident response plan and relevant regulatory requirements. The plan should outline clear steps for investigation, containment, and notification, including predefined timelines. Professionals must prioritize compliance with legal notification deadlines, while simultaneously working to understand the full scope of the breach and implement mitigation strategies. Ethical considerations should guide all communications, ensuring honesty, clarity, and a focus on customer well-being.